Hey, Mikey, I have a joke that's sure to kick this episode off with a bang. Are you ready?
Oh boy, let's hear it.
My doctor told me I need more exercise, so I started writing novels. Now I'm always running out of ideas.
Really? That's the best you've got? That was less bang and more thud as it crashed to the ground.
Okay. Maybe that one wasn't my best work. So here's a true story instead. My friends Wiley and Stanley and I went to a writers' conference in New York City last week. We booked a fancy 3-bedroom suite on the 75th floor of our hotel. But when we got back from the conference, the guy at the front desk told us all the elevators were down for repairs and we'd have to climb the stairs to our suite. As you know, I'm a comedic genius.
Oh yes, you're just oozing with comedy.
And Stanley is a master of horror fiction, while Wiley writes heart-wrenching romance novels.
Wait, is this the same Wiley as in Wiley Piemore, who regularly appears on our podcast doing creepy stuff?
The very same. So we decided to make the climb up to the 75th floor more exciting. I would tell funny stories from 1 to 25. Stanley would tell scary stories from floors 26 to 50. And Wiley would tell sad stories from 51 to 75. Can you guess what happened?
Not really.
Well, by the time we reached the 25th floor, Stanley and Wiley were laughing so hard they could barely climb anymore. Then Stanley started in with his horror stories, and by the time they reached the 50th floor, Wiley and I were clinging to each other in terror. Finally, Wiley said, "I'll tell my saddest story yet." And then he dropped the biggest bombshell of all. He had left the hotel room key in the car. Greetings, fellow listeners. It is I, your slightly dazed and confused co-host and all-around podcasting buffoon, Mr. Robin, coming at you digitally from Studio B here at the compound, just outside of Fargo, Oklahoma. As always, I'm joined by my beautiful co-host, sparkling ingenue, and all-around best friend and collaborator, Mikkel Murray Robinson, also known as Mikey on the mic. Give a big howdy to our wonderfully fragrant listeners, Mikey.
Howdy, wonderful and fragrant listeners.
Today we have a special guest joining us on the podcast, De'Andre Fahie. He's the author of Now I Know, The Lesson School Failed to Teach You, and also serves as the Director of Talent Attraction and Workforce Development for Broken Arrow Economic Development Corporation in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. Let's give him a big Mr. Robbins podcast welcome. All right. I'm having a tough day on the board, folks, I got to tell you. All right, enough with the clapping. Welcome to the show, De'Andre. We've been eagerly anticipating having you on the podcast for ages. Before we dive into your book, though, can you give us a little background on yourself and what led you to write this enlightening masterpiece?
Ooh, I like that. Masterpiece. Haven't heard that
Right.
before, but yes, more than happy to kind of share a little bit about myself. So, again, De'Andre Fahie, originally from California, born and raised on the playground where I spent most of my days. Yeah.
Love it.
Thank you. So specifically, Southern California, a city named Riverside.
Know
Grew
it
up out
well.
there. There you go. Okay, I like that. Very nice city. Grew up there around the time of 2019 through a series of different events. Ended up coming to Oklahoma, specifically in Broken Arrow. Got there in 2019, and right before everyone's favorite year,
Mm-hmm.
uh, yeah, But ever since 2019, I've been in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma, where I've really enjoyed the people, the opportunities here, and I've come to call Oklahoma my home. And during the time when I arrived in Oklahoma, the type of work that I got into was doing workforce development. Without getting too deep into the weeds, I would interact with companies in the region, interact with job seekers in the region, and get people connected with employment, get companies different resources, and just overall try to make the community better. How the book came about was there was one time there was a meeting at a school, and
Uh,
we were there to kind of talk about some of the different resources and supports we could provide to this high school. There's a group of educators in the room, the principal's there, and I'm speaking about our company and how we can do like resume workshops, professional development, that type of thing. At the end of that meeting, I asked the people in the room and I said, "Hey, by the way, if we're not here to do this for some of these high school kids, who's going to do it?" And they kind of looked around. They're like, "Well, I mean, that's kind of why we called you here today in your company. You know, we're kind of stretched thin as a school." I was like, "Huh, okay." So, but isn't that the goal to empower people not just for their diploma, but to succeed beyond that? And
right.
kind of after that meeting, I did a little bit of research, and it kind of came to my attention that the education system is not really equipped to empower young people long term.
Right.
It's mainly, get that diploma, get them to
Sure.
pass, and then they can move on and continue on to whatever they're doing.
Right.
But from my point of view and from conversations with others, it didn't seem like there was an effective way to be able to engage with young people and get them information that they're going to deem crucial as they get older. And I began to reflect on my own self. I was like, well, a lot of things that I've learned in my life, I've stumbled upon and found out later on in life, just through trial and error or just by luck, watching someone else fail, thinking, oh, I'm not going to do that. But the book came together because I was like, well, there's not really any resources out there right now for young people. And why are we going to let kids kind of struggle bus and, kind of find their way through life when we can get them the tools right now when they're young?
Mhm.
That led me on a journey with COVID. The world was shut down. I was like, well, the people need it. I got time. Let's get to it.
There you go.
And started writing away. Took about a year to put the book together, and then shortly in 2021 launched it.
Well, I got to tell you, when Mikkel came to me and told me she wanted to put you on the podcast, and she actually gave me a copy of your book to read, and I was kind of, meh.
Well, but let's give a little back. Robin is a writer and has books published and everything like that. So, whenever a writer gets a book and another writer's like, you should read this, it's like, oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
And, I'm like, you should. But this was back before Robin and I knew each other in the entirety that we do now. So I think now if I tell you to read a book, you're not going to me.
No, I won't. And I'll tell you, I was very pleasantly surprised, and that's kind of an understatement. There's an awful lot of books out there that kind of follow a very similar line of what you did here, but yours is not typical for this genre. It's very well written, and it's not purely a rant about the shortcomings of public education, although you do have some of that in there.
As it should be, because I'm with him on that.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
I think for the past 20 some years, all they've been doing is teaching kids to pass a test and get them out.
Yeah.
And that's just so very wrong. There is a lot of very useful information contained between the covers of your book. And while I know your intended audience was young people coming out of high school or college, a lot of what you wrote should be mandatory reading for most adults that I know.
Agreed.
And,
I got a lot out of reading it.
And here's just an example of the one thing that really, truly jumped out at me was the section you had devoted to emotional intelligence. You did what a lot of people do when they talk about that, what it is and why it's so important in living one's best life to have emotional intelligence. But I was particularly struck by the fact that you discuss how a person can improve their own emotional intelligence. And you kind of hit on four, as I recall, there were four key factors there. I just wondered if you could just kind of highlight that a little bit.
Definitely. So I think my section where I'm diving into the emotional aspect of humans
Mm-hmm.
is probably my favorite part of the book. Because again, all of us, we're all human. We have emotions, and they're triggered every single day by different things, different events that occur. And specifically because a lot of this book it's tied to developing people in a positive way, and ultimately, all these young people, if you're a little bit older, if you're our age, ultimately you're gonna be working. You're gonna be interacting with others in some capacity.
Uh-huh.
And if you don't have control over your emotions, you are not going to make it very far. I was,
Yeah.
I mean, we probably all been at a job where you've had a boss who was not the most pleasant to work with, or a
Mhm.
coworker that was not the most pleasant to work with.
Mm-hmm.
And that changed the dynamics of that relationship to that person, the dynamic of the work environment, and ultimately how you feel. Not even at the job, but before you get to the job or that place of business. If you're already thinking, oh my God, I've got to be there with that person, or I've got to report to that boss today, you're already getting angst, you're already getting anxiety, negative feelings before you even get to that place where you're going. And because of that, that's why I feel that people who don't have a good grip on their own emotions make it worse for everyone else that they interact with. And so that's why the emotion part of my book was my favorite, because a lot of the world would be better off if people had better control of their emotions. And so in the book, I wasn't just looking to say, hey, you should get control of your emotions because it's a good thing to do.
Right.
It's like, hey, yes, it's important. Here's why. And now here is how. And so again, we focus on talking about self-awareness, which is looking at you. You look in the mirror and take a look at what's going on with you. We then looked into self-management.
Mm-hmm.
Following that was social awareness.
Yeah.
And so we can kind of split those into two. The first parts are more self. It's looking at yourself in the mirror. What's going on in your own personal life? What do you need to maybe work on? What are you dealing with? And then the other two, which again are social awareness and relationship management, it's then looking at, okay, for the first two parts, I understand that something is going on with me. I'm dealing with divorce in my personal life. I am dealing with financial issues. That's the self part. That's me.
Right.
The next two parts are social, people around you. Okay, I'm dealing with this, but I'm going to be around other people today. I'm a leader at this company. I'm a CEO. People are going to be looking to me. I'll be interacting with them. So what am I going to do to ensure that even though I'm dealing with stuff or I have an ego, how do I then make sure that I have positive relationships with people around? I was at, quick sidebar, I was at a meeting this past week where there's a CEO for a company in Tulsa, and it was a panel on creating positive cultures, ironically. And so there's three people up there, they were talking, and the question was, what do you do to create a positive work culture? And it struck me when one CEO, he was up there, he got the mic, and he said, what's changed our culture at my company has been me taking a step back and looking in the mirror. I got to a point where I noticed that people would kind of squirm when I would walk by, or they'd kind of like shrink away. And I had to look in the mirror and reflect. And I was like, you know what? I think I've been an asshole. It's been, and hopefully it's not too bad to curse. If it is,
Oh,
bleep that
you're
out.
No, no, no,
fine.
you're
I've been
fine.
We curse all the
Oh, you
time.
have no idea.
okay, good. I've been a bad guy. I've not been my best self. And I understand that now. And so how do I then work to change that at the culture to affect the culture here at this organization? So CEO understood, hey, people think I'm being mean. I need to change.
Mhm.
I need to change.
Right.
That's basically what that CEO was saying. The culture is not good here. It's not because people aren't working hard enough. They're not doing this or that. It's me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really hard for people to say, it's me.
Mm-hmm.
The entire emotional part of my book is saying, hey, it's not the other person. It's not my mom. It's not my dad. It's not the trauma that I had. It's me. And without that, it's me. Without that vulnerability, you won't change. And so that's why
Right.
I think that's more important than learning about some of the other things they teach at school. I'm not ranking on schools, but I'm saying emotions will carry you from the time you're born until the day you die. And if you don't master that, it's going to be a tough life for you and for others.
Boy, that is
Yeah.
absolutely correct.
I know that's super deep. Sorry.
No, that's
It's
great.
fine.
That's what we do here at Mr. Robbins Hood.
But I
We go big or go home.
Yeah. I was also, I noticed, and I think this would, of course, be particularly important for someone coming out of high school or out of college. You go into great details on the ins and outs of landing the job that person wants and then turning it into their own. And as with everything else in your book, it touches on the things someone needs to know before going out into the workplace. And it's the kind of stuff that no one teaches anyone in school.
Yeah, because I think, De'Andre, we've kind of had this conversation. I learned a lot of that kind of stuff just from my family, not from school, but.
Yeah.
And I mean, when we think about that, you learn some of the things from your family, the people in your community. But again, let's take a second. Let's think about people who are maybe in communities where their parents haven't been taught those
Right.
things. And so if people in your community or your family haven't been taught about how to go on a job interview, how to manage money, how to present themselves when they go in for a job, and how to dress. If your dad hasn't learned that, or his dad didn't learn that, how will you ever get to know that information? Whereas maybe we'll just say a community in maybe a more affluent community, a more richer neighborhood. They pass down that information. They share with each other because they understand that's how you move up in the world. That's how you get connected. That's how you get opportunities.
Right.
But if you're in a community where no one's been taught that, how will that community ever begin to prosper? Not just the individual, not just the one person. How will that whole community ever begin to lift up and grow if no one's ever been taught?
Yeah, we saw a lot of that because actually I met De'Andre because I worked in workforce and boards worked together, and so our paths crossed and we just became fast friends. And there are programs that not just that company, but the company helps communities get on to help teach that kind of stuff, because it's very much true. It's like generational poverty, but it's generational because you don't have the skills to know what you don't know and to get better and to learn those things. And my grandma, she taught me a lot about that kind of stuff, helped me with the financial side and everything else, just like my mom did. But she now volunteers in her new community that she's in with a program that teaches that kind of stuff. And she was telling me all about it, and it was really nice to hear her talk about that. So it's really important because you can't get better if you don't have the opportunity to learn how. I feel like that's very true.
That's 100%. And that was one of the things I noticed about my role when I was with Workforce and that's why I was passionate about the book. And, not just my book, but any other authors or anyone else who's kind of pushing the similar messaging that I am, is I became passionate about it because in Mikkel and I's business, it would often be older individuals who are, coming in and they're needing help with their resume, or they're trying to get a job at 40 and they don't know what to do. And it's like, if we just got the information to them earlier,
right?
If they didn't have to stumble through life and try to figure it out, and them at the last straw come to us, if the due diligence would have been done while they were younger, they could have had some better opportunities potentially come their way. And so that's kind of, for me, I was like, I oftentimes felt like, and even even at that point in those people's lives, by that time, you have different responsibilities, obligations. Maybe there are, we'll say, certain barriers that have
Mm-hmm.
been placed in your life to where now it may be harder for you to gain employment. I'll leave that open to interpretation. But again, with better due diligence and supports while they were young, they could have got a decent job, got a good salary, been around good people, and would never have need to go to the workforce office.
Mhm.
And so again, that's kind of where the passion for the book came from. It's like, why come on, schools and just communities, can we do more due diligence and support while they're young, get people on supports now? That way we don't have to create a bunch of nonprofits and all these programs to help people. Well, let's help them while they're early. Let's get them on the good path now. So we don't have to do all these trying to catch up and support people programs later on.
Yeah, do it while it's easier, because I feel like it is easier when you're younger, because like you said, other obligations happen. And, the more we talk about it and I think about it, I feel a little blessed because there was some aspects that we got in school where I came from. I don't know if they still have that same capability, because I know they have to do certain programs, but we had like it was called personal finance, and they taught us how to write a check. And like, I think we had a resume writing class that one of the English teachers did, but I don't know if they did that on their own due diligence or if just they put it into the curriculum or what. But there's a few things I can't, I guess, slap the school down completely where I come from. But I also come from a small school in Kansas, really not far from this part of the world. So they can give a little bit more to each student, I feel like, too, just because it's small.
And I I think that was another really important section in your book where you delve into personal finance up to and including investment information for people who may otherwise never have a clue, moving forward. And I think that's just another piece of this book that I think makes it very, very good and very, very important.
Yeah, I would say that probably the financial literacy part of the book is probably my second favorite. Because again, I mean, the section starts talking about psychology and money, and we're
Yeah.
taught we don't even need to get to investments and how to have a bank account if you don't understand what money is, what it's used for, and why you want it, and how you plan to use. If you don't have a plan, we don't need to talk about you trying to get rich and get all the money. Why? You can hit the lottery and you can just end up blowing it.
Right.
You don't know.
That's
You don't have a
true.
good concept. You don't have a good grasp of
Yeah.
money.
Yeah.
So I started off talking about psychology. Hey, let's dive into this and look at, hey, what's your relationship with money? What have you seen in your family's history? How'd your parents talk about money? What do you want to do with it? Do you want to start a nonprofit, or do you want to go buy a new Gucci watch because you've been watching people on TikTok flaunt their cool stuff, and now you want to be just like them? And that's kind of the thing with a lot of our younger generation these days. They're glued to the phone, and they're doing a lot of comparison, and they're
Mm-hmm.
thinking, oh, I want to get that thing like that other person. Or, oh, I'm watching this influencer on TikTok. Oh my gosh, I got to go get the thing. Well, again, are you buying it because you need it and it's fueling your goals, or just because someone told you to, or you're trying to keep up with someone else? So again, I think the book begins talking about, hey, let's get a good concept and a good framework for why you want to get money and what you plan to do with the money that you do have. Once you have a good game plan there, then we can start talking about different ways to make the most of your goal towards getting money.
Wow.
I think
Okay.
that's great, because there is a lot to be said for the way you look at and feel about money as to where to start and teaching somebody what to do with it, because
Yeah.
to me, I'm like, I don't always want the thing, but it reminds me of what Dale Carnegie says, that you have to remember, when you're selling to people, you're selling to creatures of emotion. And that's what these companies are doing, is they're playing on that emotion to get you to buy that thing. And if you don't have control of your emotions, then you're going to fall, victim to that mindset. You're going to go buy the thing, and then you end up with a bunch of silly things like Gucci watches and bags, and your car breaks down and you can't afford it because you have the Gucci watch that won't get you from point A to point B. Anyhow.
But you'll look really stylish timing yourself getting there.
I know, right? Gucci should sponsor this podcast. Just saying.
Exactly. Gucci, if you guys listening, look them up.
Yeah.
But anyhow, it kind of comes full circle, I guess, is what I'm kind of saying in all of it. So,
and companies, they understand. And again, I'm saying psychology because it's a mind aspect.
Yeah.
And companies under that, what do you guys think marketing is? They understand how people are going to react. In the book, I kind of talk about a concept called predictably irrational. And the short version of that is, hey, tobacco companies, they understood, hey, this is going to kill you, but they're going to buy it anyway. So let's put a cool looking cowboy or a camel on the front of the box, put it in front of kids and young people. Let's have a dude with slick back hair smoking. It's going to kill them, but hey, they're going to buy it anyway because they think it's cool. They think it's cool to smoke. They want to be social and smoke at parties with their friends. So let's get in their mind, and then we get in their wallet. That's how it works.
Exactly. I feel like some of those companies even, got it into movies and TV shows and made it out to be cool that way and got in people's heads in that regard too. It's very, very smart.
Yeah.
Oh.
So, De'Andre, where can our listeners find your book to buy a copy of it?
That's a great question. Currently, we have the book available on Amazon.
Okay.
So if a person was to just so generously go to Amazon.com, type in the name of the book, it would pop right up and they'd have the opportunity to buy that book. I am looking, and it's at a couple of different bookstores, probably not any local to where you guys are at, but I am trying to work on getting it to be have more of a global reach. I'm trying to get it onto like Barnes and Nobles and other sites as well. But for the moment, the answer is Amazon. They can go on there and not only buy the book, but also leave a review. I think for me, I think the reviews are critical because one, oftentimes with local and new authors, people, they don't know who you are. And if, hey, is this going to be good? Is this worth my time?
Right. And
then two, again, the reviews are important to me because the ones that I've seen so far, it's kind of what was mentioned earlier, where it's not just, a 16-year-old that's buying the book. It's someone who's 30 and they're like, wow, I'm a little bit into my life and my career already, but I saw a couple of things in there that I didn't even really think about. Oftentimes it's been the finance piece that people kind of reference from the book. And again, it's finances. They're very important. If you're an adult and you've got a job, you need money. And unless if you didn't go to business school or if you didn't have someone who was teaching you about stocks and investments and why you should have 401k as soon as you can and not when you're 35 or 40, I think I'll start it now. No, you should have had it at 18 or earlier. All those things are critical. So again, those reviews help. And again, it's to get people who are not just young people, but people in their 20s and 30s, in their 40s. Honestly, if you're not in the thing with the book, I mentioned as well where I tell you in the beginning, you're not going to be an expert on everything in this book. Just because you read my book, you're not a Wall Street day trader now. That is not how this works.
Right.
Not by a long shot. But I'm giving you the nuggets and the information to get you started to understand what you need to know right now. And if you're a young person, you need to be diving into this right now so that way you set yourself up for success. And there's other references in the book to go check out other books for continued learning. And that's the mindset you've got to have. You've got to be willing to continue to learn, continue to develop professionally. That's why it's a professional development book. If you want to get better, if you want to be better, if you want to make more money, this is the book for that person who wants that.
Yeah. I think I've already done my review. So if you go on there to check out De'Andre's book, go check out my review as well.
Yes, so she's a trusted source, ladies and gentlemen.
And I am certainly going to add my own. So already you're on a roll here.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yes. Love it.
Okay, Mikey, I think you'll agree. As always, this was great podcasting. We want to thank our guest, De'Andre Fahie, for agreeing to come on this podcast and share information about his book. If you've enjoyed the podcast today, please consider purchasing a copy. Even if you don't need it, I'm betting someone you know could use it.
And you probably do need it and you just don't want to admit it. Back to the look in the mirror thing.
If you have any questions or want to make a suggestion for a podcast episode, you can email us at mr.robin@mrrobinshood.com or mikey@mrrobinshood.com. As always, you can also reach out to Mikey or me via Podophone at 580-827-0472. If you just want to get something off your chest, we're not likely to answer because we're quickly becoming international podcast stars, but don't have the dough to hire staff yet. But you can leave a voicemail. Text us if you have a question, concern, complaint, compliment, suggestion, whatever. Just don't be a dick about it. So we'll wrap this up as we always do and remind you to stay hungry, stay foolish,
and most importantly, stay weird. Bye, everybody.